Okay. Shall we start?
Yes. Launch
Launch.
off a geyser.
Strike me rudder, matey.
Oh.
Welcome to
jeez.
the Lost Legends of Redwall, Escape the Gloomer, a conversational adventure game in 9 chapters.
Conversational?
By Scott Adams and the Clopas team, a parallel tale to the Mossflower story, in association with Soma
That's my
Games,
favorite book.
Penguin Random House, and Redwall Limited Company.
When you say it out loud, Penguin Random House sounds so weird. I'm
How
just
did
getting.
you guys come up with your name?
This is giving me weird Jumanji vibes. Okay.
I know.
The automatic hint feature is active. To have a more challenging experience, enter automatic hint to adjust the feature at any time.
Should we put the hints? Deactivate them?
No, we're like pros at gaming.
His muscle and sinew lay wasted under the tawny fur that covered his big, tired body. The face was that of a wildcat who
Big.
had survived many battles. The pointed
What are we-
ears stood above a
Are you sure this
tracery
isn't
of
an
old
exam?
scars that ran from crown to whiskers. He had fearsome yellowed teeth, and the green barbarian eyes still alight with strange fires. His paws beat heavily against the stone as he descended.
What an honor.
His withered paws opened the chest he had brought down with him. He pulled the
Why
pouch
did he
from its
open it
robe,
before getting down?
placed it inside, and raised the heavy chain from his neck. He held the amulet to his brow, fondly admiring it for several moments before he laid it next to the pouch and closed the chest. Beneath the grub, beneath the cells, present where insanity dwells.
Oh no.
What is this? Okay. Oh. Oh, okay.
Oh, that's your amulet?
Yeah, I think I think when you unlock some new artwork, you can click on that.
Oh.
I think.
Now you can ward off evil. Oh boy. Gillig.
Oh, this is not voiced. Okay. I was waiting.
I guess
Chapter
you're gonna have to
1.
narrate it
Oh.
yourself.
Meet Gillig.
Okay. Yes.
Gillig the otter was armed with his trusty sling, which was a long-distance weapon favored by otters. He tightly anchored his rope to a huge ballista boulder and descended down the cliff side into the entrance of the
Ballista
abandoned
boulder? I don't
otter
think
hall,
that's
called Otter's
an
Den.
adjective.
He set about his first task,
It is now
to
a
find a
thing.
way into Cotir Castle. Skipper's words of advice echoed through his mind. You'll find the secret entrance all right, matey. You just need to look. What
Well,
will
thanks,
Gillig
Skipper.
do? This is what you must now decide.
Have you ever listened to the audiobooks? This is what they sound like.
No, but now I want to.
They have a full cast, so there's a voice for every person.
That's great. Oh,
Oh,
he's wearing a kilt.
he's Scottish.
Scottish.
Scotter.
Okay, so
Try exploring and doing things with what you discover around you, and check your belongings to see what you have. Use
Take the
full
skull.
sentences starting with an action verb
full
like
sentences.
examine, take, feel,
And do you know this is
etc.
going to be a test?
You can ask for a hint or
I'm
a
a
summary
gamer. I
at
don't
any
use
time.
full sentences.
You can't lose in this game, so feel free to experiment and have fun.
You can't lose.
Hallelujah.
Watch me game.
You can just lose time of your life.
Command Gillig here with a full sentence. Okay.
Take the skull. Take the skull.
Take the skull.
Yeah, look at
Yeah.
that skull right there.
There is a skull.
He went to grab the decayed skull,
Oh.
but then thought it better
you
to
need-
leave it be. Gillig was in the entrance chamber of the halt. He
Don't
pondered what
disrespect the
else might
dead.
he discover by looking around and then closely examining things he found.
Can I?
He had an idea, but decided that would not accomplish anything. Gillig was in the entrance chamber of the halt. He pondered what else might he discover by looking around and then closely examining things he found.
Look around.
Okay, look around.
Oh, that's cute.
We can pull the rope, I guess.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's his ballista. His ballista rope.
Fire the ballista. Oh, I can't do an exclamation mark.
You just said it. I just have no idea what that is.
Fine.
Fire the
Gillig
skull.
was in the entrance chamber of the halt. He pondered what
Stop
else
trying to
might he
deface the
discover
dead.
by looking around and then closely examining things he found.
Can you
Maybe you
just...
should just say look around,
Yeah.
and maybe it'll change the
The
picture.
young otter narrowed his eyes and peered into the collapsing halt. The sunlight pierced only a short distance into the halt. All else was swallowed by the darkness. Gillig, taking a quick glance around the room, noticed there wasn't much to look at except for a pile of rubble within only a few paws' length of him.
Okay.
Pause. That's a very bad unit of measure. I think otters have bigger paws than most.
Gillig felt the fragments of rock and wood in the rubble pile. Gillig was in the entrance chamber of
Gillig
the
got a
halt.
splinter.
Okay. Yeah.
Walk in.
Oh yeah. Oh yes, he's not inside here.
Yeah.
Gillig
just-
wanted to enter some place, but he did not know where he needed to go. Gillig was in the entrance chamber of the halt.
You only have one option, mate.
Okay, fine.
Gillig thought about entering the otter's den, known as a halt, but quickly realized he was already there. The young otter narrowed his eyes and peered into the collapsing halt. The sunlight pierced
I wanted
only
to go
a
into my
short
house,
distance
but then I
into the
realized I was
halt.
already here.
All else was swallowed by the darkness.
I just
Gillig,
examined
taking
the
a quick
rubble.
glance around the
Oh,
room,
literally, like,
noticed there
examine.
wasn't much to look at except for a pile of rubble within only a few paws' length of him. Gillig eyed the... Gillig stepped into the halt carefully, letting his eyes adjust to the darkness. He
Gillig is
scanned the
trolling
rubble,
us.
which was filled with wood, rocks, and even a skull of some unknown beast.
Which
His
you can't
eyes
touch.
stared fixedly at a peculiar piece of wood. It was
There you
long
go.
and wrapped at one end. Gillig thought it looked like an ancient wooden torch that was worth taking.
Grab that torch.
Gillig was in the entrance chamber of the halt.
I wonder what an ancient wooden torch not worth taking looks like.
It looks like one giant splinter waiting to happen.
Gillig grabbed the torch's handle and gave a quick,
Martin.
powerful tug. The otter collapsed
Sound
backwards,
effects.
still clutching the ancient torch, as a cloud of dust burst into the air from the collapsing rubble pile. Gillig climbed back to his feet and waved the dancing cloud of dust from his face. Everything around him was bright and fuzzy, his eyes fixed on the swirls of air
Fuzzy?
parading in the breeze. Time stood still as he dreamily smiled at the
Does he have a
memory
dough
of
on
the
his
day
face?
before, surrounded by the joyous feasting of woodlanders in Brock Hall. Martin the warrior, accompanied by Gonf, the prince of mouse thieves, Skipper, the leader of the otters, and other woodlanders, were billeted at Brock Hall, where meal times were like a constant feast. The woodlanders began passing food. As Skipper ate, Martin told him of Gingerveer. The wildcat was kindly disposed towards the woodlanders, and locked away in the cells deep beneath Cotir by his wicked sister, Queen Sarmina. During his recent captivity in the dungeons, Martin recalled Weasel Guard's chatter of the late Lord Verdugo's scroll of inheritance, which had vanished upon his death. The scroll, the guard suspected,
What do you
It
call
rained
the queen of the
gingerly from the
czar? Is it the
right side,
Tsarmina?
and not Tsarmina.
The
Martin
Tsar,
cleaned the October
Tsarina, I
ale from
think,
his
yeah.
whiskers.
Oh,
Kotir is not easily infiltrated.
Czarette.
But if there's a chance that scroll exists, we must have it.
Skipper raised an eyebrow as he quickly gulped the rest of his famous hot root punch. Strike me colours,
Just called it
and
on
I've
hot
got
root
just the
punch
otter for the
face.
job. Gillig shook
Wait a
himself
minute.
free of
They're
his
all
thoughts
speaking
of the
with English
past.
accents, but they
The
spell color
swirling
the
dust
American
cloud
way.
had finally cleared. Sunlight overflowed into the room, revealing more
I'm
of the
disillusioned with
vault.
this game.
He looked around now with torch in paw. If he could just find a way to light it. Congratulations! You are making progress in creating your story. Notice the paw print's progress bar
Achievement
lighting.
unlocked.
The sound you hear next will play at each new accomplishment.
Ooh.
Sounds Native American.
This game is very confused.
What country are we in again?
Russian cats, English accents, American spelling.
So if you draw a line in between all of those.
We're in the ocean.
I mean, he is an otter. All right.
Light.
Rub your paws together.
Light yourself on fire. And then light the torch on fire.
You'll be warm for the rest of your life.
Gillig was in the entrance chamber of an ancient, ruined otter halt. From where
Really?
he stood, the den looked completely abandoned and desolate. The den was lit by rays of bright sunlight that streamed
Push
in
over
from
the
the
rubble.
open entrance, thus causing the stirred-up dust motes to glow like strange fireflies. Hanging just outside the entrance and within reach was the end of the rope he had used to climb down into the decaying otter's den. There was a tall, unstable-looking pillar of rubble going up to the rocky ceiling.
A pillar
Glancing
of rubble.
around, he saw a number of rubble-packed
That's-
doorways which were impassable without
Sounds
the
like
help of a mole.
You build in
Yet there was
Minecraft.
one doorway which hadn't collapsed. It led into a dark, foreboding tunnel.
Go down the tunnel.
He's going to say it's too dark.
I don't want to go down there.
We need to light the torch.
You're commanding him. Command him to go into the tunnel. He's got to face his fears sometime. I mean, rabbits can go down dark holes. An otter's like 3 times the
Gillig
size.
checked his belongings and noted he was carrying an ancient unlit torch. A sling. Gillig was in the entrance chamber of the
Oh, you got a
halt.
sling.
Gillig was in the entrance chamber of the halt.
He was there twice.
Just to confirm, I am still in the interchamber.
Ooh,
Oh.
that was weird.
Gillig reached for the rope hanging outside the halt entrance. His better judgment told him that it would be best for it to remain there, so he could leave after he was done with his mission. He wondered
gave him
about
his
the
mission?
torch he had pulled from the rubble.
You know, this game says
did
I
he
can
really
command
know
Gillig,
about
but
it?
he's not really listening.
Gillig was in the entrance chamber of the halt.
Go into the darkness. Let it consume you.
How would you light the torch?
As an otter?
Channel your inner otter.
I think.
Can you?
We need to find a lit torch.
And then we can use the lit torch.
He went to rub something, but realized he was not able at the present moment. Gillig
He
was in
couldn't
the
find his
entrance
other paw.
chamber of the halt.
The paw is stuck on the wall.
I wanted to rub my paws together, but I couldn't find the left one. Maybe,
Oh, yeah. Yes?
maybe if you go into the dark tunnel, you'll trip over a fire starting kit.
With confidence on his shoulders, Gillig walked into the dark tunnel. A sense of foreboding hung over him as he stepped through its many twists and turns until he could no longer see where he was going. Everything was pitch black ahead, but Gillig felt certain he could leave the tunnel.
You did something.
Yeah. So he was too afraid to enter the hold and the entrance, but he's brave enough to enter the dark tunnel.
It's a very specific level of confidence.
It's pitch black or nothing.
He hates Twilight.
That's not what. Oh, no.
You
Oh,
feel an otter.
that was horrible. That was a literal translation in my head, but just realized how wrong it sounded in English.
Gillig feels like an otter.
How do you say he needs to proceed while using this? No.
Feel around?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Yeah.
Zounds.
Through sense of touch, Gillig investigated the darkness and picked up something he found. He planned to check his belongings later.
Run forward.
Gillig had a
Oh,
thought,
pansy.
but he had no idea how to do it.
Walking. What is this walking you speak of?
Walk. It sounds like you're commanding a horse. Walk on, Gillig, walk on.
His name sounds like a horse.
Gillig. I'm trying to think of what nationality that's closest to.
I mean, it sounds like the sound a horse makes, like Gillig.
Maybe you should take your thing back out into the light. See what you found. He's not good at walking,
carefully
remember?
made his way back out of the tunnel to the brightly lit entrance of the halt.
How do I actually check my belongings?
Check inventory?
Gillig was in the entrance chamber
Yes,
of
I
the
know.
halt.
Calm down.
Gillig
He's a very
checked his
enthusiastic narrator.
belongings and noted he was carrying
Hey, look what you
an
found!
ancient unlit torch,
How
a
convenient.
fire starting kit, a sling.
Light torch.
Gillig was in the entrance chamber of the halt. Gillig was ready to light the torch, but he needed to decide what to light it with.
I am ready to
Gillig was
light
in
this
the entrance
torch.
chamber of the halt.
Use.
What did I do wrong? Yes, okay.
Use fire starting kit. What?
Use or with may not be the first
Use.
word. Start with an action verb.
Use is an action.
Okay.
Ignite. Yeah.
Ignite. There we go.
There we go. That's a really intense torch. It sounds like you lit a bonfire.
From the fire starting kit and lit the torch. After doing so, the remaining bits of the ancient kit were finally exhausted, and it crumbled away.
Whoa. Disintegrated.
Gillig was in the entrance chamber
What was
of the
the kit? It's like, what are victuals? What does a fire starting kit actually have?
The author doesn't know. So it's just like fire starting kit. There's just a
You're
line
holding
in
something in your hands and you just can't quite comprehend what it is, but it lit the torch.
Alright. enter the tunnel.
He walked
It's like
through the
Hazel trying to
open
explain
doorway.
something.
As Gillig clutched his lighted torch, he gave a huge sigh of satisfaction now that he was able to see in the dark tunnel. Gillig was in a twisty tunnel lined with rubble. At one end, the tunnel ended at a wide open space, and the other way went back to the entrance.
Yeah, that's how tunnels usually work.
I mean, that's how they work in America. I don't know how they work everywhere else.
Okay.
Proceed with caution.
Caution is not in my dictionary, and without
Neither is with.
caution. Fine. Proceed.
Gillig had a thought.
That's a pretty arrogant
but he had
otter.
no idea how to do it.
Caution is not in my
Gillig was in a
dictionary.
twisty tunnel.
Nice.
Gillig
Sounding
had
like
a thought,
Ocarina of
but
Time.
he had no idea how to do it. Gillig was in a twisty tunnel.
What? Walk on, Gillig. Oh wait, he can't walk. Go forwards. Swagger on.
I have no idea how to swagger something.
Go forward.
You're never going to get the Gloomer like that. Go around.
Go around the
He
tunnel.
moved forward slightly, but he hadn't decided where he wanted to go.
Forward.
Gillig was in a
Go
twisty
forward.
tunnel.
I actually forgot.
Go down the tunnel.
Gillig was in a twisty tunnel lined with rubble. At one end, the tunnel
he
ended
lost?
at a wide open space,
Enter.
and the other way went back to the entrance. Gillig knew there had to be a way out. Gillig slowly walked down the slightly
There
dim
we go.
path ahead, letting his thoughts wander to the day at the River Moss when the woodlanders had to fight for their lives.
Please don't, Gillig.
Inside the walls of Cotir Castle, the vermin ruler sat in her chamber and summoned her aid.
Listen carefully.
The evil queen Tarmina
Oh,
Green-Eyes
that's a little
heard.
seductive.
The vile feline had an idea that would crush the peaceful woodland creatures.
I want you to go back to Kotir and bring the Gloomer here to Revamos.
Is that the voice of the
Far
doe?
beneath Cotir Castle, there was an
I was just
underground
thinking the
cavern
same.
and a great lake. The only one who went down to the lake was the guard who was detailed to feed the Gloomer. He would take down the refuse from the barracks,
I don't think you have a chance of
leaving
winning
it
this
a
game now.
respectable distance from the post to which Gloomer's long chain was attached
Well,
at the lake's
it's escape the
edge.
Gloomer, not escape the
Verduga,
doe.
the father of Gingerveer and
You're right, that would have
Tarmina,
been too
had
hard.
captured Gloomer and brought him to Cotir long ago. The monster water rat was robbed of normal sight after years of swimming in the dark, murky waters of the lake. It had little
don't think it
hearing
works
and
like
no
that.
speech at all. None of this mattered while it still possessed the instincts of touch and smell. The Gloomer was a killer, savage and mindless, particularly when there was fresh meat to be had. At the Woodlanders' Camp Willow, within the waters, something was beginning to come forward. A long shape, like a section
Beginning
of
to
tree
come
trunk,
forward.
smooth, with a many-spiked dorsal fin emerged. Skipper leaned forward and patted the giant pike's fin. "Listen, mate, that big pussycat may have a Gloomer, but us otters got a storm fin." Gillig's thoughts were broken as he walked into the large open space. Gathering his wits, he pondered what else might he discover by looking around and then
Ephraim might have a
closely
wound wart, but
examining
we
the
have a
things he
K-Har.
found.
It would be pretty useless in a cave, though.
Even if there's water in
What
here.
else might be discovered? Why are you pondering and looking around? Why not just look around?
It'd be a really good idea if I were just to look around.
Just stand there.
That would be an excellent idea.
Gillig was in a large cavernous hall filled with
Oh
rubble.
no, there's riddles.
Nearby was the twisty tunnel that led back to the entrance and a bubbling spring streaming into a short tunnel. Gillig strained his eyes in the darkness, but could only see a little above his head on the walls by the light of the flickering torch. Just barely visible, scratched above on a wall, was a riddle. Playful otters we may be, but fighters fierce upon the sea. Clang the target up above to find the fun that otters love. Strangely, there was no target in sight. Located in plain view was a ring of
These are
stones
sea
around a
otters? What are they doing
blackened
so far
pit.
inland?
Having fun, apparently.
That sounds like a fire pit. Maybe you should light the ring of stones. Fairy circle.
Lights in the ring of stones.
Light the stones.
Gillig attempted to light the fire pit, but could not
It is a fire
decide
pit.
what to use to do it.
Ah,
Use your
Gillig was in
torch!
a large open area with many interesting features.
very interesting features. He's an expert on caves.
He's a geologist. That's about it.
Okay. Circle is beyond
Sir,
comprehension.
is there a British way of spelling circle? Sir Cell.
Okay. Just look around again. Because I keep forgetting what it looks
Gillig
like.
was in a large cavernous hall filled with rubble.
Alright. He's got a target,
Nearby
he's
was
got a
the
riddle,
twisty
and there's the
tunnel
fire
that
pit.
led back to the
There is
entrance
no
and
target.
a bubbling spring
Oh, yeah.
streaming into a short tunnel.
Oh,
Gillig
forgot
strained
that.
his eyes in the darkness,
Oh,
but could only see a
wait.
little above his head on the walls by the light. He looked up, but could not see much of
No.
anything swallowed in the dark shadows. Through the dim light of the torch, Gillig could just make out a scrawling placed high on the wall. Though squint as
Light
he
fire
may,
pit with
it was
torch.
still too dark for him to read. Gillig was in a large open area with many interesting features.
Very interesting.
Let's not list them. I can't use used.
Oh.
Ig-
Ignite, fire pit, torch.
Gillig attempted to light the fire pit with his torch, but to no avail. There was no
Oh,
fuel
no.
in the pit.
Oh.
Gillig was in a large open area with many
Wait,
interesting
wasn't there, like,
features.
in that rubble pit, like in the very beginning, wasn't there, didn't it say there was, like, wood in it?
Yeah,
The,
I think there was.
the one that you, like, felt around?
Gillig made his way back through the cavernous hall, through the dark, twisty tunnel,
Gillig
and
was in
found
the entrance
himself back
chamber
in
of
the
the hall.
entrance to the halt. Gillig was in the entrance chamber of the halt. Gillig looked at the rubble and saw it was filled
Wood
with rocks
scraps.
and wood scraps. Gillig collected some wood scraps
There
from
we
the
go.
rubble. Gillig was in the entrance chamber of the
Tag
halt.
team.
He walked through the open doorway. Gillig was in a twisty tunnel. Gillig went from the twisty tunnel into a
I don't have
very
time for
large
this.
open space. Gillig was in a large cavernous hall filled with rubble.
Oh, I can't type.
Nearby was the twisty tunnel that led back to the entrance and a bubbling spring streaming into a short tunnel. Gillig strained his eyes in the darkness, but could
So
only see a
embarrassing. I have
little
no
above
idea what
his
you mean by
head
that
on the
word.
walls by the
P.
light of the flickering torch. Just
I
barely
wasn't done
visible,
yet.
scratched above on a wall,
Just
was a riddle.
say wood scraps.
Playful otters we
Yikes,
may
you are
be,
overloading my
but
poor little
fighters
memory chips.
fierce upon the sea. Clang the target up
With your
above
big
to
bad
find the
sentence.
fun that otters love. Strangely,
I don't know what
there
to
was
do with
no
fire
I
number
target in
do
two.
sight.
too.
Visible
What?
was a ring of stones around a blackened pit.
I
Okay.
think you both broke the game, Chib.
Oh, yeah. Great.
I don't know
This
what
is
to
my
do with fire number two.
this is my week off. I don't want to see error messages right now.
Put wood scraps.
Put wood in pit.
Gillig dropped the wood scraps he was carrying into the fire-blackened
Simple
pit.
command.
This is a
Gillig
third
was in a
grader.
large
You need
open area with many interesting features.
Okay.
Gillig attempted to light the fire pit, but could not decide what to use to do it. With a fire pit already made,
Ignite with
all
torch.
Gillig had to do was drop some wood into the pit.
I
All you
already
gotta
dropped
do,
wood into
Gillig.
it.
That's
Gillig
all you
was in
gotta
a
do.
large open area with many interesting features. Gillig tossed the torch into the fire
Tossed.
pit and
You,
stood back.
you can still use that,
Fire
Gillig.
roared to life.
Don't need you anymore.
He was in a large cavernous hall
Got my
filled with
fire
rubble.
pit now.
Bright light glowed around the room as the firelight flickered and danced
Rabbits?
in the fire pit. Nearby was the twisty tunnel that led back to the
Bunny
entrance,
They don't have
and
rabbits.
a
They
bubbling
don't have rabbits in
spring
Redwall.
streaming
They're
into
all
a
hares.
short tunnel.
There was
High
no
above the fully exposed
rabbit
riddle
family,
was
but
a
it's
small
peaceful.
round target.
Oh.
Down to the rabbits we will go, through the bunny burrow below.
Don't.
They flee from us and hide their food, but we'll bring 'em for hullabaloo.
Roo-doo-doo.
Playful otters we may be, but fighters
Are you
fierce
going to
upon the
raid the
sea.
rabbit?
Clang the target up above to find the fun that otters love.
They like
Glancing
Wait.
around,
harassing
he
rabbits?
saw a fire pit with a burning
this?
fire in it. Gillig could not take
This was
his
written by the
mind off the
Africans.
meaning of the riddle. His eyes furrowed at the memory of the day before. At the first light of
Yes.
dawn,
Wait, isn't there like
Skipper met with
a
Gonf
ferret
and
that gets
Gillig.
beaten up by a
Gonf,
weasel
this
in the
here is
series?
Gillig, the otter
I mean, a
I...
rabbit.
Hi! Pleased to meet you, matey.
Gonf excitedly shook
What?
Gillig's paw. The young otter gave a bewildered look to Skipper, who merely laughed. Now why don't you tell the lad what you told me? The mouse
No.
balladeer quickly responded in
I was
song.
supposed to be writing down all these
Prince of Mouse
rhymes.
Thieves knows a way to get into Cotier today. The Gloomer who's guarded it so, no longer a reason not to go. Within the abandoned hold you'll take a slide to depths, direct to lake. Oh, just find the otter's bunny burrow, and you'll know what to do.
The mouse thief
Why is there a bunny
grinned
burrow?
ear to ear. Gillig shook himself free of his thoughts of the past. He suddenly jumped, realizing perhaps
only
he
one
could find the
explanation.
bunny burrow the
So
mouse
Mina and the
thief had
doe were
sung
working
about,
together.
and maybe even the scroll itself.
It's the only way she was able to rise to power. I don't actually understand what just happened.
I think he just had another flashback. And we have to find the bunny burrow. Because apparently otters like to harass rabbits.
Wake up, everyone!
Okay.
He was in a large cavernous hall filled with rubble. Bright light glowed around the room as the firelight
Bunnies and
flickered
burrows.
and danced in the fire pit.
There was a short
Nearby
tunnel.
was the twisty tunnel that led back to the entrance, and a bubbling spring streaming into a short tunnel.
You can see
High
the fire
above
pit.
the fully... He was in front of a short tunnel. The only
Why
thing
was
that
there a
remained
boss?
was to enter. Gillig was
He
in
was
a
in-
large
wait
open
for it,
area with many
a short
interesting
tunnel.
features.
The only thing that remained was to end it. Fine.
Gillig stepped through the water and entered the short tunnel. Gillig eyed the rubble on the ground
What?
and thought that it might require closer examination.
I don't trust you, Rebel.
Gillig was in the short tunnel which led to a dead end. He was surrounded by pitiful rockwork which went up to the ceiling. Water
It's
flowed
pitiful.
from the spring in the fire pit room into the tunnel
We
and
now
emptied
call it
into a
fire
large
pit room.
pool of water on the floor.
I hereby dub this fire pit room. Well, you lost your torch, so I don't know how you're going to see anything anywhere else.
Gillig looked at the rubble and saw it was filled with rocks and wood scraps.
Oh!
Gillig was at the end of a very short tunnel. Gillig picked up a nearby rock from the rubble. Gillig
Very
was
good.
at the end of a very
I
short
can use it in your
tunnel.
sling. That's incredibly ominous. Just a
Okay.
paw
Gillig
reaches
was at
out of the
the
water
end
and
of a
just
very
stops
short
you.
tunnel. Gillig had a thought, but he had no idea how to do it. Gillig scoffed at the target. It was an utter
Wait, there's a target?
speciality with the sling
Where's
that
the
made
target?
enemies quake in their boots. He could send
Hurl your
stones
stone.
hurling through the air and strike any object with great accuracy. Gillig was at the end of a
I
very
think Gillig's a
short.
little proud of himself.
Gillig stepped through the water and returned to the fire pit room. He was
Oh.
in a large cavernous hall filled with rubble. Bright light glowed around. High above was the natural rock roof of the cavern.
Fire!
Holes acting as chimneys were scattered throughout the ceiling. On the wall near the ceiling was a small round target.
Okay.
Gillig was in a large open
Yes,
area
I know.
with many interesting features.
Would you like me to tell you about him?
Gillig loaded a smooth pebble into the sling and was ready to
Reload.
fire it.
I don't think that's the sound that actually makes.
I
With
guess
the
it
stone
depends
in
on
his
what the
sling,
target's made from.
Gillig shot at the target, hitting it perfectly in the center. The stone ricocheted
What a
off
shot.
with a clang and landed in the rubble. A heavy thump sounded in his ears, erupting from the short tunnel.
Can we ever have a Redwall hero who's just average at things?
Used what?
Who's just average at things?
No.
Gillig was in a large open area with many
Only rabbits are
interesting
average at
features.
things in Redwall.
Except they all have one specialty.
I want my rock back.
I don't know how to retrieve. I'm not a dog.
You're a sea dog.
Gillig felt the fragments of rock and wood
Something's
in the
gonna
rubble
stop you
pile.
from doing this.
Gillig was in a large open area with
Just
many
take it all.
interesting features. Gillig picked up a nearby rock from the rubble. Gillig was in a
Don't take the
large
wood.
open area with many interesting features. Gillig collected some wood scraps from the rubble.
Oh,
Gillig remembered the loud thump he had heard in the short
Patience,
tunnel.
patience.
Gillig was in a large
there's a
open
rabbit thumping
area
for you.
with many interesting features.
Thump back.
Gillig stepped through the water and entered the short tunnel. Gillig was in the short tunnel which led to a dead end. He was
Oh, yeah?
surrounded by
Don't
pitiful
say.
rockwork
Cause and
which
effect.
went up to the ceiling. Water flowed from the spring in the fire pit room into the tunnel and emptied into a large pool of water in the floor.
Oh. We just.
Gillig leaped down into the pool and swam
Way to go,
powerfully
Otter.
through the water. The otter
Skillfully.
skillfully navigated the winding underwater path.
This
and
water,
swam
this
otter
otter is
is
just
to
making
be
me doubt my
trusted.
abilities and everything.
He climbed out of
He's
the
just
water.
too good.
Gillig shook his head. A slow smile played on his lips.
I just got this really dramatic image, like when you see those surfer dudes exit the sea, and just shake their heads.
Slow motion.
Yeah.
Don't worry, Gloomer. I'm a lifeguard.
Gillig was
Look,
in the
6.
otter's bunny burrow.
Oh,
It was lit by a metal
Why is it the
mirror
otter's
high
bunny
up on the
burrow?
wall that cleverly reflected the light of the fire
he
pit
claimed
from
it for
holes
the
in the rock
others.
walls. A steady stream of water flowed from the drain hole he had come from and emptied into a large downward slanting hole in the floor. Bees droned fuzzily around a large beehive nested above it. Against one wall was a nest full of unhatched snake eggs. Gillig shuddered when he saw them. Above the drain hole was a
Smash the
wooden
eggs.
drain cover that was connected by a rope coming out of the wall. He had caused it to open when he had hit the target in the fire pit room. On the floor was a coil of rope, and near it there was a large metal ring that was attached to the rocky wall. On a side wall was a large wooden sign dangling from a single wire. Looking at the sign, Gillig read in an older, archaic otter dialect.
Hark me, hearty. Make a stern rope fast to this ring afore you visit the old soft bellies down below.
That
Gillig
voice
was in the
really
otter's
doesn't
bunny
sound
burrow.
archaic.
We don't use soft anymore.
We're hard bellies now. Sorry.
Do you even lift?
Ripped otters. Gotta impress that Gloomer.
I keep forgetting the real purpose that why we're here. Okay.
I really wish they would have updated the image. Because he's still at the end.
They updated it when it was dark and that was it.
Okay, there's a lot of interesting features here.
You should smash the snake eggs before they hatch.
Oh, I hadn't thought about that. I just thought it was mean to kill baby snakes.
They kill baby otters.
He had an idea, but decided
It's more
that
productive.
would not accomplish anything. The way into Cotir and to Verduga's scrawl is through the otter's
Scrawl.
bunny burrow.
What does that have
Gillig
to do with
recalled
snake
Skipper's
eggs?
words yet again. Gillig was in the otter's bunny burrow.
Why is it the otter's bunny burrow?
Why is it not the snakes? Oh,
Wait,
what?
what did you solve?
I don't know.
Gillig moved about, gently making his way forward. He did not
Yes,
notice
that's
a
right.
swarm of angry bees had erupted from the hive until too late. They
What?
hovered over him, looking grim and vengeful.
I
He
just picked
smiled
up the eggs.
impudently, aware from the sight of his
That was
sticky
all
fur
right.
he had accidentally brushed the beehive. In the
What?
silence that followed, he backed slowly, holding both paws out with an air of innocence. The bees
Wasn't me.
began to attack him. Gillig
Why are
swatted
there bees in the
furiously
cave? There's no
as the
flowers in
maddened
here.
mass forced him flailing around the room. He tumbled over the coil of rope and struggled to extricate himself.
Why do I feel like I'm
Tossing
about
and
to die?
swiping about, the young otter had fallen over
That was the
backward
last we ever
and
heard of
slid
Gillig.
into the hole as the rope and
Why
beehive
is this
trailed
music so
behind him.
happy?
Oh, look at him, he's being stung.
I'm very confused. All I did was pick up the snake eggs.
Gleefully, Gillig slid down the water slide. As the young otter played on the slide, he recalled that day at the River Moss, the clash between Gloomer the Great Rat and
what about
Stormfin
the
the
snake
enormous
eggs?
pike.
Do you have it in your
released
inventory
a
now?
giant pike called Stormfin. The pike rushed through the sluice gate, creating a miniature tidal wave.
Maybe you can hatch him and train him as a pet.
Swift chevrons of water rippled out to both sides of the
Chevron.
bank as Stormfin sped downstream like a great arrow. Gloomer thrashed the water as he swam upstream, feeling his prey getting near. The onlookers on the bank saw a spout of water shoot high like a geyser as the combatants crashed together.
Wait.
Stormfin rose clear of the
How do you
river,
say that word?
swishing his
Word,
tail
guys.
in a mighty leap. He launched himself back into the water like a downward
I said
torpedo
there
with
wouldn't be any
gaping
guys.
teeth. Gloomer was waiting. The surface boiled
This obviously
in
isn't
welter of
England.
cascading water, shimmering scales and ragged fur. The whole scene streaked with
Guy,
blood.
sir.
Stormfin thwacked away at Gloomer's injured side with his heavy
Maybe the
tail
bees were
like a
defending
stout
the mark
paddle.
lady.
He had severed Gloomer's tail and was tearing ferociously at the rat's hindquarters. Stormfin's jaws clamped tight and dragged the rat backward, down into a deep pit beneath the bank. The watchers on the bank saw Gloomer's front claws emerge wildly from the water, grasping
Claws?
at thin air before
Claws.
they vanished beneath the surface.
Wait, what is a Gloomer?
The destroyer from Cotir
I thought he was like
beaten.
a
Stormfin had
rat.
finally won.
Oh,
But
Gillig
crazy
sighed
rat.
with
I thought
relief,
he
That
was
was
a
like
fish.
knowing he would never
locked in
have
a
to
cave
worry about meeting the vile Gloomer.
and went crazy.
Suddenly, the water slide ended, and
I
Gillig found
actually
himself
thought it was a
tumbling
fish.
downwards in the air, head over rudder, through a large, dark space. The
Wait,
fall
so
was
the Gloomer's
quickly
dead already?
broken as he splashed down into a
Apparently,
dark body of water.
What are we escaping from again?
the ghost of the Gloomer.
Was that his skull at the beginning?
He would never have to worry about meeting the vile Gloomer. Wait,
Good.
he didn't narrate this, did he? Hello?
Suddenly, the water
Narrator?
slide ended, and Gillig
Suddenly,
found
the
himself tumbling
narrator.
downwards in the air. Head over rudder, through a dark space. The fall was quickly broken as he splashed into a dark body of water.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Backup narrator.
Congratulations! You have unlocked your first achievement. They are just
All right.
special little things in the game for players to find or do. They're just for fun, and are not needed to complete the game.
Remember that. They're just for fun. What?
A badger
Why does he get a
lord
badge
appeared
award?
in Gillig's thoughts, his soft voice like the
Really
whisper of an
random.
owl's wing beat in the night sky, proclaiming that you have earned the achievement title of Novice Explorer.
Oh, thanks, Badger.
I like how he's a little nonchalant about this. Oh, Badger Lord.
What? Doesn't the Badger Lord appear in your thoughts whenever you achieve something?
I guess I haven't achieved anything worth achieving.
It's just for fun. Okay, that was
Wow.
apparently chapter 1, and I still don't know why. I just picked up the snake eggs. What happened? How did that escalate?
Things are escalating too quick. You somehow brushed the beehive. I think it's just a analogy of the Cold War. You can't just poke the bear. It's going to escalate to nuclear war.
Oh, okay. Chapter 2. Meet Gloomer.
Oh, snap. It's
What
not
the?
dead. A few days previously. Oh, snap.
Oh, that's it.
He looks cool, actually.
Here's a collar.
Chapter 2. Meet Gloomer.
I'd
A
rather
few
not.
days previously, the
It's a
destroyer from
bit different
Cotier
from
was
Meet
beaten.
Cute.
Stormfin had finally won. Or had he? Deep within the cold, dark depths of the river Moss, and unknown to the triumphant Stormfin, the sorely wounded Gloomer quickly squirmed into a tight crevice in the rocky walls of the bank. Instinctively huddling into it to escape the fury of Stormfin, he pushed into the rough, narrow, water-filled tunnel, one just large enough for him, but not the gigantic pike. Safe from the gigantic pike, Gloomer swam
You
up
don't
the
need to
narrow
repeat that
hollow
he's
until he broke through the
gigantic.
water with a heaving gasp. Each deep
Big,
breath
huge,
echoed
gigantic.
harsh against the
You
surrounding
gotta
stone,
nail
informing
these
him
in.
that he was in a small cavern. The smells of his fur soaked in blood intruded into his nostrils, and the agony of his legs was more than the beast could bear. His vision was blurred, unable to distinguish anything aside from the light and darkness from the faint phosphorescent glows that filled the room. The
That's a
room
$10 word
groaned
right there.
as Gloomer attempted to center himself while he floated in the water. With all his might, he desperately began to search for a way out. Gloomer was floating in some water.
Gloomer. That's his
Are
name.
we playing as Gillig?
You thought this game was about Gillig?
I mean, I've been bamboozled before.
Press here when ready.
Now you play as Gloomer the Great Rat. He is yours to command as you work to rescue him from
This
the
is a
cave.
dating sim.
We have to give, has Destiny a paw and make sure they get to meet.
He was floating at the surface in a pool of water within a small, faintly
Why do we
glowing
want to help this
cave.
guy?
Gloomer could see the glow all around him. Everything else was dim and fuzzy to the nearly blind great rat.
I guess I can't look around.
Feel around?
Gloomer ran his tattered paws around and felt a solid ledge jutting out of the water at the level of his head. The rock was jagged and rough in his paws. His claws traced through the rock and became filled with muck. The familiar scent of mud danced through his nostrils. Gloomer was
Familiar
floating in
scent
some
of
water.
Was he now?
This is so ONTP.
Grab onto.
The great rat scavenged for loose rocks, but to no avail. It was as clear of debris as a mother hedgehog's nursery. Gloomer was floating in some water.
What a metaphor.
Hedgehog is beyond my comprehension.
What is this hedgehog you speak of? Maybe you should try saying something in Lapine.
I can't figure out how to graka something. Forgive me. What else was
Pull up on the ledge? Did you try that already?
Well, that's what I meant when I said grab. Okay.
Oh.
Gloomer winced in frustration as he slowly
No, that's not
paddled
what you meant.
forward. He floundered through the water as his tail was no longer able to aid his balance. Within a paw's length of Gloomer, the top of his head bumped into a solid ledge. Exerting all his strength, the exhausted fighter heaved himself onto the rock ledge. Gloomer's nose twitched. The smell of several serpents wafted from the
My
ledge
snake
into
eggs.
his nostrils. The great rat could feel the many vibrations in the rock as it slithered closer to him. The fearsome monster quickly attacked the water snake. Though the savage was greatly weakened after his battle with Stormfin, the snake was no match for the great rat. He took a mighty swipe
The
at the
great
large
rat.
snake, forcing it to retreat to the wall. Sounds of younger
Such a
hisses
great
filled his ears, and without regard to his wounds, the
Did
wrath
all the
of the
snakes
maddened
hatch?
beast was
You
upon
touched
them.
the eggs and they all hatched?
Silence fell upon the cavern.
The magic touch of an
Finally,
otter.
exhausting the last of his strength, Gloomer fell into a deep sleep. When he awoke, he found his wounds had only just begun to heal.
It's like when
Achingly,
Aragon touched a
he
dragon egg.
pulled himself up from the ground.
Okay.
The accomplishment sound as Gloomer is a bit different.
Why?
What? Thanks.
Gloomer felt water
I
dripping
don't want
on
to
him.
achieve anything as this guy.
Gloomer was on a rock ledge. He had an idea, but decided that would not accomplish anything.
What are you going to wash
After
your water off?
countless seasons swimming
Just
beneath
lick it off.
Kotir, Gloomer had felt every piece of his lake, but
Shake
this
yourself like a
cave
dog.
was unfamiliar to the blind rat. Gloomer was on a rock ledge.
He was. Dry fur.
Gloomer was on a rock ledge.
He listened.
Yeah, he listened to you.
Can you walk?
Gillig had a
Walk
thought,
on.
but he had
Whoa!
no idea how to do it.
Gillig had a thought.
Gloomer was on a rock ledge.
Somewhere deep in the cave, Gillig had a thought.
But he still didn't know how to walk. Okay.
Are we the first ones to have played
He
this
crept
game?
about slightly.
Did they
The
not
loss
like
of his
beta
tail
test
threw
this?
his balance off. His whiskers indicated something was in front of his face.
Whiskers.
Gloomer was on a rock
It's
ledge.
his nose. How many times are
Great.
they going to tell me his balance is off because his tail is gone?
One of these days you're just gonna fall over.
Fawn.
Sniff.
Fawn.
Come thou fount of every blessing.
Gloomer smelt the lingering odors of snake and stormfin. He was robbed of normal sight and had little hearing, but the great rat had learned to rely heavily on his other senses. Gloomer
Nice
was on a
work.
rock ledge.
Walk forward. Falls into the water.
He crept about slightly. The loss of his
Slightly.
tail threw his balance off. His whiskers indicated something was in front of his face. Gloomer
Wait, is this guy
was on
missing
a
his
rock
tail?
ledge.
Maybe it was his tail that's in front of him.
I found it. Feel in front of you.
Feel in front.
Feel in front?
Gloomer ran his tattered paws around the floor.
So why are
The
they always
solid rock
tattered?
was covered in mud, and the pool of water rested in the center of the cave. Feeling around the sides of the
Was
air
air
bubble
bubble
tired?
cave, he felt a hard rock wall with many roots growing from it. One spot, though, was soft and spongy.
Dig it.
Cool.
Gloomer was on a rock ledge.
I'm still on the ledge, even though I walked forward.
It's a big ledge. What the heck is an air bubble cave?
I think it's because it's a cave submerged in water, but there's air inside it.
Uh-oh. That means we're gonna breathe it all out.
So we're on a timer.
It's an invisible timer. Dig the spongy.
Gloomer felt the dense material move inward slightly as his paws pressed the soft, spongy area. The opening was slightly smaller
It's an
than the
animal.
bulk of the enormous great rat. The
What?
enraged Gloomer swiped about ferociously. The water rat sensed the murky waters of Katir Cavern was near, but the cave stone wall stood between him and his home.
What?
Gloomer was on a rock ledge.
Yeah? Yeah, you were.
Gloomer pulled at the root. The root was firmly attached, and he just could not pull it out, no matter how hard he tugged and
I just
tugged.
can't do this.
A small piece of the
You
tip
ask too
broke
much.
off and fell into the water and vanished. The
Vanished.
root in the wall was as long as his arm and springy. It felt a little like a carrot root, but more flexible.
What? You found some flavor out.
Gloomer was on a rock ledge.
It means the bunny burrow is closed.
You found their winter storage.
Gloomer grabbed the longest root and gnawed on it until it came off in his paws.
What?
Oddly, the root tasted like a carrot, but was a bit more flexible. Again and
What?
again, the paranoid great rat checked to see that the root was still with him.
What does that even mean?
Hey, all there, root.
Gloomer was on a rock ledge.
You can do it. This is weird.
Why is he paranoid? What's he paranoid about? He didn't even do anything.
Somebody wants to steal his root.
Where did this root come from?
Hmm.
Gloomer ran his tattered paws around the floor. The solid rock was
Check your
covered in
inventory.
mud, and the pool of
Oh.
water rested in the center of the
That's a
cave.
good idea.
Feeling around the sides
For some
of the air
reason, it's
bubble
weird that the
cave,
Gloomer
he
has
felt
an
a hard
inventory.
Again and again, the paranoid great rat checked to see that the root was still with him. Gloomer was on a rock ledge.
Stick the root down the spongy hole.
The evil great rat poked and dug deep into the material with the root. With a whoosh, the root was pulled from Gloomer's grip, going through the matted material into the empty space beyond. As the plug in the wall fell apart, the river moss, with all the speed of a hare warrior chasing vile vermin, flooded up into the previously sealed cave. The water seized the bulk of the great rat and pressed him into the newly created tunnel. Suddenly,
Gloomer is
he
massive.
stopped. His enormous body was too wide to go completely through it. Gloomer was stuck like a cork in a bottleneck. Behind him, the force of the river moss pushed on him, and in front of him was pure darkness.
Yep.
All right.
Gloomer checked his belongings
Drowned.
and found he was not carrying anything. The great rat kicked with his legs and swiped with his paws, but all he grasped was the open air.
I thought he was
Only his
underwater.
hips had contact with solid rock. Gloomer was
Yeah.
trapped like a rat. Wait,
Because the water.
he was a rat.
He was.
I'm a rat.
Gloomer squirmed, shook, wiggled, jiggled, and twisted as best his bulk would allow.
These hips don't lie.
Roaring like an enraged badger, the great
I'm
force
impressed.
of the river moss suddenly launched Gloomer down the
The
winding
river was
dark
impressed
tunnel.
too.
Minutes passed as his body tumbled, then shot
Gillig will
like
be
an arrow
impressed.
from a squirrel's bow, he was suddenly hurtling through the air. With a great splash, the giant landed into the familiar waters of the underground lake beneath Cotir Keep. Behind Gloomer, a new small waterfall had appeared in the wall of the cavern. Its waters fell down into the lake in an endless torrent. Gloomer surfaced with water
Hey, I remember that
dripping from his
waterfall.
ugly bulk. His monstrous head had appeared from the depths like the worst kind of
Whoa.
vision from a bad dream.
Ow.
As he inhaled
Look at those
deeply,
whiskers.
his nostrils were filled with the scent of fresh meat. The killer rat mindlessly followed the scent and swam forward towards the smell of a live, tasty otter.
Oh no. The badger
Within his
horseback.
mind.
Wait, is he appearing to the? He's appearing to the Gloomer now.
He smiled as he spoke with the softness of a winter's night, declaring you had earned the achievement title of Daydream Crasher.
Within his mind, a badger lord became visible. He smiled.
I mean, I used to think badger lords just appeared to badgers, but apparently they appear to great rats
Chapter
too.
3. The Chase.
It's getting intense now.
Gillig the otter, relaxing peacefully on the surface of Cotir
Ugh.
Cavern Lake, dreamily
Let me take a
remembered.
5-minute break. I'm gonna go
Skipper
grab a
had
snack.
given a
This is
good
fun
natured chuckle and slapped a
I-
paw on
Oh
Gillig.
yeah, I can pause.
though.
I don't know how to stop the narrator.
Stop him. All right, I'll be right back.
Yep.
Maybe you can scrounge up Chipster.